Alright, so I think we're live now. I'm just kind of waiting for my phone to update, I think. Anyway, so I just want to go over the little conversation that's been going on. I did a video about it, Pigeons did a video about it, Mr. Vrowit did a video about it, and Zaza actually has responded, and he made 2 response videos. One to Pigeons 420, I believe, and one to Mr. Growit's video. And I watched the Mr. Growit video, but I did not watch the Pigeons 420 video. So I want to get into those. I want to get into the responses. I want to see how this conversation actually plays out as we go through and find out what's actually going on with how Zaza Genetics actually tests his stuff and goes through that entire process. So I do want to get into those things today. And it's actually letting us chat. So that is absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to go Pigeons 420. No. I need to go Zaza Genetics, which I subscribe to his channel. I think he's absolutely awesome and puts out some great stuff. And again, I haven't heard anything about what I haven't heard anything like super negative about his genetics themselves. So I want to get into this, see what his response is, and holy shit, this is a long response. Zaza reacts to Mr. Growit's bad grower or breeder. Must watch. No, there's a lot of answers that, or a lot of questions that I wanted answers to. So we'll see how we do. That looks like he starts soon. Hopefully it's a short intro. Here we go, I think. Mm-hmm. Is it... Can you not hear him because he's too quiet, or can you just not hear him at all? Here, I'll try to, That's weird. Because for me, it's really loud. Maybe my... I have no idea. Maybe desktop audio needs to be higher?
When it comes to science, you can't, I mean, you can form your own hypotheses, your own theories or whatever, but you can't really argue factuated science, you know, so.
I agree with that. You can't argue factuated science, but there's maybe I need to watch more, but there's not a whole lot of factuated science when it comes to how our genes work. But I didn't cut my hair. It's still here. I just had it up. Thank you, though.
So ultimately, it's all documented science that whatever comes out of my mouth. So
I'll have to watch more of his videos.
It comes from history. It comes from just
Good to see you, Nate.
knowledge. Same things we learned in the 7th grade, elementary schools, elementary, dear Watson. So ultimately, we just go back and refresh our minds and our memories, and then we build on it with scholarly articles that are pulled mostly from colleges and universities, right? Those are the articles we use to build on that information. And when it comes to 20 years hands-on experience, man, listen, there's really no competition. You know, I'm in competition with myself always. You know, it's 20 years hands-on experience. I could say light years, but I just want to keep this video all factual. Let's carry on.
20 years is a long time to be experienced and growing.
I want to hear your thoughts about what way do you think breeders should go about it. So I think one of the bigger disagreements amongst breeders is the testing of the genetics before the release. I had Zaza Genetics on my podcast. I actually have an episode coming up in a couple weeks here. I sat down with him. It was actually the second time I sat down with him and fired off a bunch of questions. And one of the things he mentioned in there, we talked about testing, and I was asking about what the proper way to test genetics before releasing to the public. And one of the things he had mentioned is that he does all in-house testing. He does all the testing himself. He wants to be sure that what he releases to anybody else besides him is solid. It's not going to harm on them. He wants to get to the point where he's comfortable and then release.
That's a fact.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I pointed out in my video, and I actually got a couple, I think I actually only got one comment about it. Someone said that it's not that he doesn't test genetics, but he does all of it in-house genetics. He has a very specific team that he tests genetics with that I believe they claimed he employed, but I don't know too much about the details on that. But yeah, I made sure to also specify that the genetics are in-house tested and that he doesn't do any testing. I didn't even like clickbait anything and make it seem like he didn't test his genetics at all. So I don't know where that comment came from exactly, but let's see his response to that.
Because when you have 20 years hands-on experience, it comes with also a trained eye. You understand? So if I'm selecting a population for whether undesirable or desirable traits, I can't rely on an inexperienced eye or just a random grower to be able to select on the ability that I need them to. I have to rely on my own 20 years of experience and my own trained eye, because that's all that makes sense. You know, if I'm able to build up another breeder and help him to train his eye with his own hands-on experience, then yeah, we can create that network, right? But until we just not ready for.
Yeah, I could see how that would be interpreted the way he decided to phrase that. But I'm glad that more context did come out to specify that he does in-house testing and he just has a limited pool that he does it with. And apparently he's really confident in his product. And how's it going, Nathan? Good to see you. Yeah, it's good that he's confident in his product, but one of the biggest problems I do have with this method of testing is, again, you get a limited pool with a limited way to grow. So he either has specific ways or he does super specific testing without changing up the environment too much. Because, I mean, going through all of this, depending on how many plants you're able to grow, you're only able to test so much of that gene pool before you put it out to the public. Humboldt does in-house testing as well, and one of the things is about Humboldt Seed Co. is they actually had a pretty big controversy recently, and if you want to watch my video on that, you absolutely can. And also, Rob from CLTV, he did a little series on Humboldt and how they do their in-house testing when it comes to the triploid genetics. And if you're doing in-house testing and you're only growing a certain way, like they only grew outdoors, they didn't know what their plant was going to do indoors. So when they put it out there for everyone, it ended up not being so great.
For that, yeah, we have to constantly educate with good science, and and that's just my preference. You understand what I'm saying? That's no science or here. That's just my preference. I don't, and that's why, because of my trained eye. We'll carry on.
It's good to be confident.
Because he doesn't want to have any bad experiences happening, such as the plant flipping, perming, showing nanners, for example, at some point throughout the flowering stage. Now that statement alone caused another breeder, Chaz Westport, to speak up and talk about his perception of really the importance of having a team of testers. So Chad would say not just test yourself, but also send out to a team of testers around the world. He had mentioned he sends testers out to a whole bunch of different people in different areas, some indoor growers, some outdoor growers, and he likes to send to new growers because they often make mistakes and they tend to stress out plants more than experienced growers. So Chad likes to get input from all of those people and then make the determination whether or not he's going to release it.
And that's cool. That's his preference. That's his way of doing things, and that doesn't make my way of doing things incorrect. My way of doing things is based on my experiences. So his experience is how he.
Hold on, I gotta plug my laptop in. Yeah, so far I don't disagree with anything he's saying. He seems very rock solid. He seems really confident in what he's doing, and when push comes to shove, if you can be confident in your method of doing things, if you can be confident in your product, that's going to be very huge when it comes to dealing with people. And when we see his customer service deal and how he reimburses people for when he has bad genetics or something bad happens with the genetics, he'll reimburse them. I think that is a perfectly fine thing to do. And when you get into his opinion on it, he's not saying anyone else or everyone should test their own product, but what he's saying is, if you have that confidence, in my opinion, what I think he is saying is, if you have that confidence in your genetics and in your method, to where you can put out something and it is solid, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. And I think that's pretty much going to be the point of this entire video, and that's not something I disagree with at all.
Uses his experience to determine how he does things is on him, so and shout out to him. I've never had a conversation with him. I've never I've heard only I've seen him post a comment on the shout out to him. We can always have a conversation. I'm always in my Discord, available to talk, and for me it's always about encouraging and fostering an attitude of exactly that. Us wanting to do better for the community. For me, that's what it's about. So I'm always willing to come together and with breeders.
I don't think it's necessary that they have. I don't think it's necessary that they have a sit down. I do think it'd be a pretty interesting conversation, but this doesn't seem like they're having a huge debate over who is like doing things the right way. I think Chaz Westport would have a lot more respect after hearing that he does in-house testing, and doing things a certain way and not just pumping out seeds like it kind of seemed like he was alluding to. But no, I think it would be a good conversation. I just don't think it's like absolutely necessary, because just with the conversation swirling around, I think it's pretty obvious that we do have a big respect for each other in the way we do things, and there's nothing inherently wrong going down.
Whatever you want to put titles you want to put on yourself is fine. For me, the only thing that matters is the education. That's all that matters. There's no competition, because this is education. I'm here as a duty, and
how's it going, my okay garden? It's good to see you.
I'm willing to work with you so that we can better this community together. It's never, a contest or anything like that. So, I'm always open.
Genetics. At least that's what I grasped from what he was saying in another video.
It would be nice, yeah.
He actually
I do hope they do it.
I'll link his video down in the description section below. He goes into both of their opinions in one video, and I thought that was a pretty juicy video as well. But that's just one example of how breeders just simply aren't on the same page when it comes to testing. Now there are other things.
Yeah, he alludes to that in the From the Stash podcast conversation.
Acceptable and not acceptable plants to firm. Now there are two types of firms.
I'm not exactly sure how well dog breeding translates into cannabis breeding. Plants and animals, we're extremely similar, but we're also very different. So I'm not sure how well it translates to each other. But having experience in breeding going into another breeding project definitely will give you a leg up. It's just how much. Because when you give birth to that many kids, like a plant can have hundreds of seedlings or hundreds of seeds. There's so many different variabilities, especially with the F1s when it comes to the difference in the plants and the pool of genetics you're putting out. So when you're putting out F1s or even F2s, which have some of the largest gene pool diversity, it can be very difficult to gauge where you're going to be at. And then I think you're going to have to go into like a pheno hunt into F1 and test a ton of seeds to find out what you really want to breed with next, and then back cross it, if I'm not mistaken, with the parent genetics to make it a little bit more stable, have those be F2s, and then do it again with F3s and so on, just to narrow down your stuff and get the resistances you want and all that. But it takes a lot of testing to get to that point, because I can only imagine how many seeds you need to pop in an F1 generation to finally decide what you are perfectly content with. And I don't know if I'm hitting this with like a super specific picky idea of what is going to be going on, or if I am being a bit naive to how easy it might be to find a keeper pheno.
Terms where the plant is in flowering, and within the first roughly 2-3 weeks of flowering, there will be pollen sacs at the nodes. Now, from what I learned, this is genetic. It's not stress induced. So this is going to be within the genetics. It happens. Apparently there is a way to make it more recessive trait, so it shows less often. That just comes down to not selecting those and using those for future breeding projects. But there's also hermaphrodite plants that show intersex traits via nanners, and that is said to be stress induced. And that'll typically show within the first several weeks of flowering, right? So the plant starts to flower. I've had nanners show as early as week 3, 4, 5. Very common. That is a big, a big blow to the grower because, well, you got to kill the plant at that point. Now, some people will take and pluck nanners off of the plant and try to get the plant to continue on for weeks and weeks and weeks until harvest, so they actually get a harvest. Others are just going to kill off the plant at that point. So having nanners show within the beginning of flower, in those first several weeks of flowering, is detrimental. Now, what are the things that can actually cause the plant to be so stressed out that it causes nanners? Well, there are several different things. One of the things is heat. Too high of heat, and the plant can be so stressed out that it causes nanner. Too high of light stress, that causes I took that upon me because I messed up. I felt like I had the light too close. A grower error. That's what I personally deemed it as. And I think a lot of growers will take responsibility if they are growing plants outside of the normal parameters. So too high of heat. How much is too high of heat? It's a little bit subjective, right? Are we talking over 90 degrees Fahrenheit? Are we talking over 100 degrees Fahrenheit? At what?
I think at one point in the conversation, Zaza Genetics did say that he tests beyond 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is absolutely crazy. I don't know if he does that like in every single section of the grow, so like seedling, veg, flower, but he does do that testing, which is crazy to me. But if you want to be confident in your product and you're going to do all your in-house testing, it's going to be a matter of getting those big guns out, maybe even introducing pests and molds into your garden knowledgeably to test the resistance of those things. But I don't know if that's something he does, or if he just will grow a plant, it not have bugs or mold on it, and assume that it's rejecting those things. But I don't think I've heard him touch on that kind of stuff.
Point should we test to ensure that nanners aren't going to show before actually selecting that plant to be used on a breeding project? I think that's up for debate. I think there's a lot of disagreements with breeders amongst that. And just in general, showing nanners when there is too high a heat, there's some disagreements on if that's a grower error or a breeder error. Zaza Genetics, for example, he had mentioned that's a breeder error. You should be breeding that characteristic out. The plant should be able to take so much light and not produce nanners. Other breeders are going to say, oh no, they ran it too high of heat, it caused nanners, that's a grower's fault. And so unfortunately this information is being passed down to the growers, and there's confusion going on. I actually had a grower hit me up.
Look, this is what I'm saying. If you confused, go do the research. Check the facts. Like, ultimately, weakness is weakness. It can be bred out. It's an undesirable trait. Undesirable traits can be bred out. Whether recessive or dominant, they can be bred out. And, there's ways to do it. There's different tools in my toolbox. You don't understand the transgression back cross where I could use a recurrent in a donor parent, so and push out as much as the donor parent genes that I want, while only maintaining the one gene that I'm looking to fix within my elite line. But that's another topic for a more advanced lesson, but that's just a tool in my toolbox that I can get that done. I can go and acquire and fix one trait while getting rid of all the rest of the unwanted or undesirable traits by using an advanced tool in my toolbox. You have to build your toolbox up. If you're an advanced breeder, you claim to be, don't just talk. Just if you're going to talk, have something to say, but know what you're talking about.
I don't exactly know how to interpret that. So I'm glad he has whatever tool in his toolbox. He's saying a lot of buzzwords. He seems to understand what he's talking about, but it's not exactly translating well to me. And I don't know if that's because I don't understand breeding that well. That's a very big possibility. Or if he's just kind of tiptoeing around without hitting the point. That's kind of what it sounds like a little bit to me. I would love to hear more of what he has to say upon that, but a big bottom line is, if you're going to tell us to do the research and find out more about breeding, maybe try telling us where to go for reliable information, or telling us what books are good for learning cannabis breeding, or lessons that people are teaching, or specific creators or something like that. Don't just say, do your own research, look it up, find out stuff about this, because there's so much research being done on this, especially since now that it's becoming more legal, people are actually able to study it. You need to give your sources if you're not going to go into information or claim to know in detail during your response to a breeding controversy, if we can call it that. That's a little bit of a heavy word to use for this situation, but a breeding confusion and not actually clarify what is being done or how you do it, that seems a little bit ridiculous to me. Many traits are inherent or not inherited. Zaza is the one confused. So one thing Zaza possibly could be confused on is that there's always the capability for your plant to herm out, because that is one of your plant's things that it wants to do. If it's not pollinated at a certain time, if it's being stressed too long, if it's being grown past its harvest window even, it can herm out on you and pollinate itself. And that is because the number one mission of every plant ever is to reproduce, make babies, and push another generation into the world. Now, there's a lot of organisms that can't do that, like mammals, that can't self-reproduce like that, but there are also fish that can do this. There are all kinds of things that can self-replicate. And the reason is because... so, the analogy I like to go with is the easier it is for an animal or organism to reproduce, the harder its life is going to... the harder it is to survive, the more it sucks at living. So he does have a lot of info that he puts in his videos, and I'm also in his Discord. But I don't go there much. So one thing is like rabbits. They reproduce. There's the saying, oh, they're effing like rabbits or reproducing like rabbits, making a lot of babies. And then there's things like spiders that make thousands of babies at a time. Why? Because so many of them die at such an early stage, and cannabis is no different. So it needs to be, it needs to have an easier track to reproduce, and one of those things is hermaphroditics. Have I grown his beans? No, I haven't, but I want to. From what I've seen, really good stuff. Quality genetics from what I hear. I do want to get a hold of some of his stuff, but a lot of other genetics have been taking priority over getting his genetics, but I have been looking at him for quite a few years now to want to get genetics from, and I just haven't.
Up recently, and he had mentioned the Chilote OG is showing nanners. And when I heard that, my heart dropped. I was like, what the heck? I stress these plants, heat stress, light stress.
It's good to see you, by the way, Chuck.
Down to the F3. Why is it showing nanners? It doesn't make sense. Nobody else.
Now you got to understand, too.
He stopped him a little early there.
Generations and generations, which is equivalent to years when we're talking about isolating a particular undesirable trait and removing it. Like it's not just something you can go to F3 and then it's done. You got to really keep going. You got to really keep going until you are 100% sure that that recessive trait has been avoided throughout several generations of inbreeding. This is the epitome of an inbred.
Yeah, I could see that. There are a lot of factors when it comes to it. There's a lot of years and a lot of time when it comes to this project. Anyone in chat, but was meant for Anthony. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
It's always important to know the two parents that you're starting with. The foundation is the most important, because off the jump, if you start with the wrong parents, you can be at a disadvantage. You can be at a if you start with two good parents and choose by lineage and know the particular breeder and the genetics, and like I said it again. I'll say it again. You could buy, if I wanted a German Shepherd, I could just go buy a German Shepherd, yeah, but that's not gonna be an ideal situation when I know there's actual reputable breeders who take pride and own themselves in actually breeding champion line German Shepherds. So I'm going to do my research, and I'm going to end up getting a German Shepherd from one of those breeders, and that's the foundation you want. So if I was to just go get a German Shepherd from a backyard breeder, right? Just back there throwing it together. And then imagine I wanted to start my own line of shepherds.
I'm good. I'm glad to hear it, Anthony. Glad to hear your stuff's going well. How did your first run go? Was it like better than a lot of the stuff you've had before, or was it not as great? You have a lot to learn still. I kind of want to hear it. one thing with this is like, yeah, you obviously want to get quality genetics from a quality breeder to breed your own genetics. That's kind of a given. And Mr. Grow It knows that, and he knew it in 2019 when he started breeding to make the Chill Out OG. And I feel like this was something that was lost in translate or in communication. A lot of breeders don't select tester groups, especially smaller breeders. How small of a breeder is Zaza Genetics, though? Like, that's kind of what I've been trying to figure out, is how small is his operation really? Is it big enough to where he could send out tester groups? I mean, his YouTube channel has almost 4,000 subscribers on its own. It's at 3.93 thousand. So he has access and the connections to send his beans out to be tested by reputable growers with an experience level that I can only imagine he would be okay with. I mean, a lot of these guys have been growing for 15 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25, some of them. Some people have been growing for like 30 years. He can use those growers as his friends, content creators, what have you, as an advantage to increase his pool and amount of seeds grown. And not big like Ethos or Elevate or none of those. He's more of a breeder of the breeder mess, I'm pretty sure. Chad doesn't usually watch things. He listens to it, but people hear something and make their own interpretation. And yeah, especially with the way Zaza Genetics speaks and expresses how he goes about things, there is a lot of room for interpretation because he isn't clear about a whole lot of stuff. He likes to beat around the bush, and maybe that's because he talks about it a lot in his videos and he just kind of wants you to go check that stuff out, which is fine. I'm all for it, being a content creator and all that stuff. But if you're addressing a situation and people want to hear what's going on behind the door, get into as much detail as you're comfortable with getting into, like plant count, specific stresses. I don't even think he's specifically gone into how many years he'll grow or generations he'll make before he says a seed is okay to be sent out. Because whenever you're putting a seed out into the public, it seems, it's a huge risk in a genetic being sent to someone who's going to get those traits out. So I'm going to have to watch a lot more of his channel, it sounds like, and learn what he has to know about but am I saying his name right when I say Masonic? Is that how you pronounce it? I'll have to look into him too.
And I started with this. That's too. I'm already putting years and years adding it to my work, because now I have to remove undesirable traits. That's the first and foremost priority. Off the rip, I have to get it stable to where it's neutral. Neutral meaning like no undesirables, but then we do the work after that of stabilizing individual desirable traits and forming it how we want, right? But ultimately the goal is to start with two parents that are for sure not possessing any undesirable traits. And with that,
and he doesn't really go into any undesirable traits specifically, so that can be interpreted in a lot of ways too. Because does it just mean a low chance of hermaphrodite or hermaphroditic tendencies, or does he also mean like bud structure, actual morphology of the plant, terpene profiles, trichome density, like any of that kind of stuff? Or is he just looking at the main point of the topic, which is herming plants with the nanners or also the pollen sacs? Yep, I feel the same way, Nimbus, about growing. I mean, my plants seeded out in this grow, and I found no evidence of hermaphroditic traits at all. And that could be due to me being not so observant, not being able to look and see if there's pollen sacs on my plants or nanners on my plants that I somehow didn't see, or if they just weren't predominant enough to be noticeable or something like that, or if a stress caused it, like underwatering, overwatering, or just how much lights I had, something like that. I have no idea. Yeah, it could be just a blanket statement to be like, oh, make sure you have good pest resistance, mold resistance, low herm traits, low susceptibility to stress when it comes to light or watering schedule. Like he wants plants that were drought trained, but then it's like, how much do you really know unless you talk to the breeder and ask the specific questions you want to ask? Because a lot of these things, when you go onto someone's website, maybe he only talks to people he knows in person to make strains with. But again, so far I haven't heard him specify that either. Like, where does he get his genetics? What reliable breeders is he dealing with in this context? I haven't heard that either. Like him name a specific breeder, like, oh, these guys, they're super awesome. Almost everything I get is breedable right out of the bag. These guys, those guys, and the other ones, or my friend Jimmy or something.
Else was reporting this. Well, come to find out, the grower actually went beyond the harvest window and nanners were shown.
But again, maybe he just wants that to be left up to interpretation too, because he wants us to understand what to us makes a reputable breeder. And from what I've been seeing, he talks a lot about advanced stuff. So maybe just the people watching him already understand what a reputable breeder looks like, or he just doesn't want to talk that much. His breeding efforts, some of the best traits. The strains that tend to herm, he won Spanibus was such a strain.
And that's what I think that I thought a lot of people knew about, but if plants are grown past the harvest time, there is a high chance of nanners.
Good to see you, Stoke Smoke. Glad you could join the stream.
Right, it wants to continue on. It wants to self-pollinate, create seeds, and obviously have those seeds drop to the ground, and then more plants grow. That's a part of nature. So yeah, if you're running plants past the harvest window, it can certainly show nanners. And do we blame that on the breeder, or do we blame that on the grower? I think that's another thing a lot of people argue about, because we hear about nanners should never show by any circumstances. Nanners should never show. Unfortunately, they're hearing that. They're pushing plants past the harvest window, seeing nanners, and then they're going back to the breed.
All right, so and yeah, let's.
This I'm excited to hear about.
Explanation of when a female, and we always hear the term last ditch effort. When a female is making a last ditch effort to preserve her own genetics, right? That will trigger in most females, not all, right? Because ultimately it's all about the reaction, right? So even if it may trigger in all females, the reaction won't be the same, right? So even if me and 6, 7 of my brothers and sisters, right? If I had 6 or 7 brothers and sisters, we all live in the same house, and we all caught the flu. Although we all are from the same gene pool, and we have the same virus, same flu, right? We all gonna react differently to it. It's gonna affect us differently. So it's the same within. It's the same. Genetics are very universal, and it's the same when it comes to plants, right? So ultimately, you want to choose and select the most vigorous and healthy and strongest plants because they won't exhibit nanners when that reaction is triggered. When you know when they are at that point, they just it's just they're so vigorous, you know, healthy, athletic. This is why I always stress those are the traits you want to breed for, because those are the traits that'll prevent you from ever having hermaphrodites and undesirable traits.
And saying, hey, your plant's showing.
So basically, all he's going over there is get healthy genetics, breed with them, and the likelihood that you'll have healthy next generations is that much higher. And to address the whole copycat genetic situation, put a quote here. I hope the quote is correct. If you have high times winners, who cares if 3 out of 10 of them herm? A lot of people. 30% is pretty big, I would say. But then again, who's to say how many of them herm, and who's to say why? A lot of that could be the breeder's fault, but also the way he describes going about breeding, he just breeds, pumps and dumps, and just throws out genetics. As far as I know, from what he said, that's not a very honorable way to go about it. It just seems like you're like flipping a car on Marketplace for very cheap and just kind of like buying one and then cleaning it and then selling it for like that much more. This is a great point by Zaza as well. There are just so many inconsistencies in using tester groups as their different phenotypic expressions. Your data could end up completely skewed. That's very possible as well, but I feel like if you're putting something out to the public, it should be tested by more than just one person or one very small group of people. Like, let's say he has 10 testers and they can each grow like 20 plants at a time. So if he has 200, or that'd be 10 testers at 20 plants at a time, that's 20 times 10. That's 200 plants that you can grow and test at a time. And he's putting years into these experiments and then putting them out. Then he only has that much. And putting out testers, it's just to increase the window of what you can see in your genetics, because it's very important to have an idea of what's going on, because even with Mr. Grow It's Chill Out OG, I mean, Pigeons 420 grew one that exhibited very different colors from anything Chris has seen. And that can happen at a large scale. And when you put out the genetics, there's all these variables that you just barely touch the surface of testing. And I think that's the biggest problem people have. But if he is sure that he's using super healthy plants and he knows that they can avoid this, that, and the other thing, I don't see why this big controversy is going on, or why so many people are talking about it. But I do get why people are so confused when it comes to the grower side of things, because, again, the way he talks about it is just so vague and not super specific, and I can see why at the same time, but it's just kind of a messy situation. But
Nanners. But yeah, if you're within that harvest window and you're seeing nanners, then the plant should be harvested at that point. I've had so many genetics over the years where it was ready for harvest, and I was like, oh, I'll give it another day. I wanted to bulk up a little bit more, and then all of a sudden, like a day or two later, it has nanners on it. Now, am I going to go back to the breeder and say, hey, your plant showed nanners?
I feel the same way, Nate.
To take responsibility? I'm personally not. I personally am going to just say, hey, I should have harvested a day before. But there are growers out there who are going to go to the breeder and say, hey, your plant's showing nanners. You have bad genetics.
And in the broad sense,
blah, blah, blah.
I should
so again,
say.
This kind of stems back to breeders not being on the same page.
All right, yeah. So let's clear that up, right? That's not the breeder's, fault, because ideally we want to harvest our plants within the ideal harvest time, right?
Obviously.
Ultimately, it will take conditioning over some years of selecting with a certain level of experience. it's selecting is not as easy as
Cheers,
as
Dad
it
Marino.
sounds. You
Good to
gotta
see you,
get that
man.
hands-on experience, and you got to build your eye up. And as you continuously build and go in different directions and try.
If you get banana, how long does it take to actually develop a seed if you let it grow? Are you talking about an actual banana? Because I have no fucking idea. Oh, if it herms? I have no idea. It probably really just depends on the strain itself. That'll be strain specific, probably pheno specific, but a couple of weeks, I think, in general. Talking about nanners. Checking for herm is one less thing I want to do in my garden. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. No one wants to check it out, Dad Marino. No one likes checking for herms and making sure your genetics are good and all that stuff. But it's one of those things that has to be done to know what's going on. Sorry to hear you had an issue last harvest. I also did, but I'm just smoking the seeds because I don't give a shit.
Try different things with the tools in your toolbox, you start to gain that experience. It doesn't make you a bad breeder.
I also thought he meant an actual banana.
After harvest time, come on, be fair about it.
Page with things. And unfortunately, it's trickling down to the grower, and there's confusion. And it's not really just a breeding topic that there's confusion, right? There's confusion within lighting. There's confusion within soil biology. There's lots of disagreements that happen, but it seems recently there's just been a lot of people who have just been confused on the breeding side of things when it comes to when you should test, how long you should test, when Nana should show.
Hey, I'm glad we inspired some.
Day 79 is fucking crazy.
Listen, ultimately, if you a bad breeder or you built your brand and your reputation and you made a lot of money on bad breeding practices and pollen chucking and lack of education, then I get it. I understand. But if you're a breeder who may not have known so much along the way, but you feel like you want to build and you want to do it the right way, then that's what I applaud at the end of the day. And either way, regardless, whichever one you are, we sparked the conversation, right? Because when I came into this community, wasn't nobody even talking about. Nobody knew what heterozygosity was, and we upped the level, to the point where people started wanting to challenge the sensei.
Yeah, it's definitely good to hit the
hey, listen,
fundamentals.
I'm still Mr. Miyagi, but I'm willing to work with all my Daniel sons, no doubt. But just know, I'm gonna always be Mr. Miyagi, and I may get a little gray in the beard, but it's that moment you think you can hop in the ring with Mr. Miyagi that you done duck, right?
Organics are respectable.
Hey, man. Listen, let's work together. I'm telling you. Hey, because that ain't what you want. Yeah? Carry up.
If it's the breeder's fault, if it's the grower's fault, there's a lot of questions at this point, and it seems like there's not really a clear-cut answer on these things. So I want to make this video to spread some awareness, to let you guys know that there are people who are just not on the same page about different things. So your beliefs may
That'll always be true.
The fact of the matter is, science has...
It'll always be true that not everyone's going to be on the same page. I mean, from a breeder level, there's so many different ways to do it. So many different genetic expressions. Cultivar, phenotype, all completely different. And then there's growers, right? There's what it was Anthony mentioned that there's way different ways to grow, and it just can really mess with your plants and have them show different expressions. So learn the fundamentals of each way to grow first. That would make the most sense. And then get into once you actually can grow competently, if you want to breed that's a completely like. So far, it's been like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of things you need to actually know to be able to create quality genetics, especially in today's environment where it's just there's so many established people that know what's going on. There's almost no excuse to grow bad genetics, especially if you want to make a company on it. I prefer organic growing as well. It's a lot more forgiving, I feel like. Still, auto run terms issue. Yeah, I don't understand why salt-based nutrients got a bad rap. Probably because of how they're sourced or something, but it's all the same molecules. It just needs to be soluble in water. I haven't grown a lot of autos, so I wouldn't know about them herming more, personally.
Hasn't evolved enough to really show everything we need to know about this plant. We are continuing to learn new things almost every single day, and that's one thing that makes it fun for me is it's an endless amount of things that we can learn. Again, this isn't bashing any breeder at all. I know I named Zaza and I named Chad Westport. Both those guys I respect highly. I gain information from both of them. Zaza's been on my podcast a couple times. Chad's been on my podcast a couple times. I welcome them on my podcast again in the future because they really have a lot of great insight. But not all breeders are on the same page, and unfortunately it's causing confusion for the grower. So I'd love to hear your opinion on what you think about these things. Testing. How do you think testing should be done? Should it just be internal by one person? Should it be spread out to multiple people? Hermaphrodite plants. Is it the grower's error or the breeder's error if the plant is run too high in nanner show, temperature is what I'm referring to, or too high of light? If the plant is exposed to too high of light in nanner show, is that the grower error or the breeder error? I'd love to know your opinion down in the comment section below.
What is
Pigeons 420 video down.
What is PGRs? What is that
Down
abbreviation
in
for?
the description section below. Click on that, tune into that. That's a good watch. It shows both Zaza's perception and Chad Westport's perception, and leave a comment on his video and let him know that I sent you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.
All right, let's see if he has any clothing statements.
Much love, bro. He hit me. He's like, man, listen.
Okay, yeah, no, PGRs are fucking garbage.
But I already know it's gonna be a good video. It was a banger. It was a good video.
Thank you guys, Anthony,
just,
Nate, Chuck.
I'm
Thank you
inspired
for
just to know that we
specifying
sparked
that.
a
I really
conversation.
appreciate
Shout
it.
out to Chad Westport, man. I never had a conversation with you, but once again, we can always talk, man. We can always figure out ways to collaborate and build, because ultimately it's about QCE.
Oh, they do.
Community and education. We bring quality to this community through education. So let's link, brother. All right, gang. So that was it, man. Much love to Mr. Grove. Much love to CLTV. Much love to AC Infinity. Make sure you hit that code Team Zaza at checkout for AC Infinity. Make sure you hit ZazaGenetics.com.
How do they make the buds drier? How do the plant regulators do that? Do they just like constrict the vessels of which the I'm sure we'll look that up at some point. Bong breaks? Did you break your bong, bro? Don't fucking do that shit. I think that might have to do with just the grower over drying because the buds are so big. And then he also did react to Pigeons 420 video.
No, they burned Atlanta to the ground.
What up, gang? It's your boy Zah back with another bang.
Yes, sir.
Bring quality to this community through education. So much love, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Get it.
Like, comment, share.
What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are well and warm, kicking it fly today, baby, because we've got one for you today. What is that? Well, I'll get right to it, my friends. Yesterday, Sunday, From the Stash podcast dropped a brand new episode. Go check it out. You won't be disappointed. Had Zaza from Zaza Genetics on there, and man, he was dropping some bangers. Happened to stumble onto the topic of testing your genetics. He said this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends too. So, I come into this game with just my dog knowledge, so I apply everything the same way I might breed a puppy.
Also, does anyone know how long he's been breeding? Because, like, breeding our plant rather than breeding dogs. And does anyone know how long he's been breeding dogs before this? Like, how much knowledge he's actually going into growing cannabis with when it comes to dog knowledge? That sounds like garbage. Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. I can see why those would have gotten a bad rap.
Dog knowledge, I mean, legitimate knowledge with collegiate education is backed, scholarly articles.
Dude, I saw that. I saw CLTV. I saw his genetic in a short that he was doing, and I am very excited to get a hold of those genetics as well. So far, I've collected Mr. Growitz, Chill Out OG. I'm growing 3 of those right now. And once Rob from CLTV releases genetics, you know I'm going to get on top of that. And then if Pigeon's over here, if he's doing a grow project, if he's doing a breeding project, I would love to see what he's got a hold of. And when I get into making my canine cake, I'm going to offer to send those guys some seeds once I get a generation in and be like, hey, these are F1s. I want you to test them. I have very strong parents going into this. I want you to see how you guys can do with this. If I feel confident in sending them F1s to see what we can get out of those plants. But I do want to also send them some of my genetics once I get into the breeding project. But yeah, I saw CLTV's breeding project. It looks fucking fire.
Information and studies and all of this stuff is within the world where I come from. So that's why I mention that. It's the legitimate world, the legal world, where all the education lies. 20 years, hands-on and eyes-on experience.
I hope your stuff goes well, Dab Marino.
I believe in testers. I don't use testers, and I got a whole team of guys who would love to.
This is the quote that was translated horribly.
Create your own.
Interpreted.
Your own, because ultimately, I think me and Chris had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. It was, it's more like, when you step out the house, you don't step out half-assed. You step out, looking good, smelling good, and a first impression is everything. So I feel like there are trees.
I knew as soon as Zaza.
Hey man, I could have said it better myself, man. The boy know what he. Oh, I ain't gonna lie to you. Oh, the boy know what he talking about. Let's get into it.
Zaza said that I was gonna make a video, and as soon as that video posted, Chad Westport left a comment in the comment section that mentioned that he
Good to hear it, Dad.
Respectfully. And so I wanted to have him on, and he said,
The Night Inferno number 8 crosses.
With me, man.
Very
we've
cool.
Got a lot to discuss here, real quick. I seen your comment under the Zaza from the Stash pod.
I see you happy to be a part of this conversation. It go again. It's always the way that they love going against me because it makes them seem like this is what they do. So let's go against the Mr. Miyagi. Let's go against him publicly. But what you say has to have basis.
I don't think he's necessarily going against you. I just think he's trying to have a conversation. And the fact that he refers to himself as Mr. Miyagi when going into this, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. But I also don't have experience with his genetics, so I don't know if he's a breeding master or anything like that. But he seems to feel about that himself, and I like the confidence. I just don't necessarily enjoy the way he chooses to express it, which is perfectly fine. Let's get some let's get some dubs for Dab Marino doing fucking God's work in here, being a breeder and working through some of these cuts and trying to do a great thing for the community. Fucking love to see it. Black Velvet from Clearwater. From Tiki? What is Tiki? Is that a genetic? Oh, it is a genetic. Okay, it's a cultivar, I see. Tiki Madman. I'll have to look into him. I've never heard of him until now.
It has to be factual. And you have to actually grasp the concept of what I said first before you can. Let's get into it, man.
Holy shit. Yeah, he's going into this pretty fucking hot. He's just automatically assuming that he's going to be speaking against him, and he's coming in really aggressive. Let's see how this kind of pans out in a minute here. Oh, I'm from Michigan. So that's pretty awesome hearing about local dudes.
Video, breeder
Small world.
versus grower, and I really liked what you had to say, and I thought, you know what, why not better than to get the man himself to explain his comment and to make it clear for all of us. So please, Chad, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's a great way to kind of get into it, because it was just, a comment in general about sometimes I like to talk.
That's pretty
about
awesome. I'd love to get a cut
fundamentals,
shipped.
and I enjoyed the show, but one of the things
Buying
I
a cologne.
was testing, and that Zaza wasn't testing is kind of what I heard someone in the
Kinda what you heard is wrong. Definitely kinda what you heard is wrong. Zaza never said Zaza doesn't do testing. I said that I have such a legitimate amount of hands-on and eyes-on experience, because that's what it requires for you to successfully select and isolate traits, these very subtle traits amongst hundreds of many plants, 20, 30, 40, 20, whatever, it don't matter. These subtle differences that you need to identify when it comes to something important like isolating an undesirable or desirable trait, right? That's what it's about, though. It was never about I don't test my stuff. So don't put words in my mouth to try to don't put words in my mouth.
I don't think he's trying to put words in your mouth. I think he misinterpreted what you said, and he heard the first part, but didn't really understand the second part. I feel like a lot of people did that in that conversation, where they just heard, "Oh, I don't send out testers," and then just kind of tuned out for a second, felt like they got fucking flashbanged, and then had a ringing in their ears and got that fucking Call of Duty concussion, and didn't hear when he said, "I do all my testing myself and send out a product I am comfortable with." Again, I feel like he could have articulated that better, and then also people could have reacted better.
That's not what I said. I said I don't utilize testers because they're not on my level. Now that I'm breaking it down for you, they're not on my level of hands-on and eyes-on experience that you need to selectively isolate traits and genes. So let's be real here.
comments had chimed in and said he's doing the testing himself. And so let's just start with testing. Why is that important? I think it's super important for a lot of people who use the plant medicinally. They're typically following the rules in their state. They may have 4 plants, 6 plants, whatever that is, but they kind of count on that for medicine. So if you were to not do your due diligence and just pass stuff to these people and...
Bro, what are you talking about? I just don't do my due... First of all, the only reason...
That's not what he said. He's not referring to specifically Zaza in this situation. He is writing up a hypothetical. If a proper amount of testing isn't done, you won't know what product is going down. And he is seemingly taking it pretty personally.
I choose not to have other, because they don't have the skills to make sure that my genetics is at a certain standard before I let it out of my hands. You understand? It has to be at a certain standard. I hold my genetics to a certain pedestal, and Mama always told me, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. So this is the rules that I follow, my rules, my preference. You can't hate on that. You shouldn't even be worried about what I do, to be honest. Unless you're watching my videos to learn something, you should be only focused on whatever it is you do over there.
He is absolutely heated.
I don't know what. Listen, before people started tagging me and saying, "Yo, this man right here is dropping videos just like yours right after you," I didn't know. I'd never, and that's just not to take nothing from you, your accomplishments or anything. It's just the type of person that I am. My head is down, and I'm always in the laboratory. I'm always grounded, bro. I don't have time to worry about what you do, who you are, or what you're concerned about when it comes to me, because I'm always trying to achieve excellence. I'm working always to achieve excellence. I didn't make the president's list of academic list just by slacking. I want to achieve excellence in everything that I do, bro.
Half of their harvest is not good, or maybe even more so, that really hurts. So to me, that's the number one reason why you should test. Commercially and for consumers, it's great because you're able to give phenotypic expressions, feeding schedules, flowering time, all of these different factors that are important. But testing is crucial for that one aspect. And when I heard that, you're just doing in-house testing.
Quick note here for the chat. Nimbus, I think the Raspberry Ripple looks super dope. And I'm glad that turned out really well for you. Did you end up harvesting that and being able to smoke it? How is it treating you so far?
Just fundamental alarm bells went off.
Bro, ring as many alarms as you want, because you have not grasped the concept of what I said. You just want to be in the conversation and oppose me rather than work with me.
Very possible.
You really were concerned about, I'm not a can of content creator. I don't do what you do. I'm actually a real breeder with years and years of knowledge and hands-on, eyes-on experience. Like, I've really done this already. You understand what I'm saying to you? And I teach people how to do it. Truthfully, I can hear Goldbeard Genetics right now, one of my best students, saying, "Zah, move out there, let me handle it." You shouldn't even be talking to me about this conversation. This is something you could be talking with Goldbeard, 703, Dad, No Limit Edibles, Tony Trini. You could be talking to any of them that could have broke this down for you. Because they already reading genetic code. Like, I'm not going to come up here and say, "Oh no, I don't test because it's just whatever. I don't want to. So I'm putting out," like, bro, don't put words in my mouth and don't insinuate, because it only makes you look a certain way.
Yeah, no, I think you just misunderstood what you were trying to say.
Foundation for your argument.
One is the quantity that you're testing and the ability that you have to test individually. I don't have a license. People who have big license.
And I don't think it helped either that Pigeons 420 made the thumbnail in a specific way to where it really tried to hammer. Well, I'm not saying he tried to do this, but it really seemed like he was hammering home Zaza's genetics stance to not test your genetics. Again, misinterpreting what he said and what he was trying to say in that podcast episode, that he doesn't send testers out to random people he doesn't trust with his genetics, thinks they don't know what they're doing, not going to hold them to a certain standard, and that at the end of the day, I just thought of this, he wouldn't be able to breed with that genetic unless the tester decided to take a clone and then ship it out. Whether Zaza paid for it or the grower who was testing the genetics paid for it, it adds an extra step that's can seem unnecessary, especially if you have a large enough pool to breed with. So that's one of those things too. Number one pheno, the purple one, is the black isorace, leathery strain, and the number two smells kind of like orange peels and not the strongest citrus ever. I do like orange peel smell. Your gear should speak for itself. I completely agree. Haven't seen or heard anything about Zaza's stuff. I've only heard positive things about his stuff. I've seen his stuff in like Reddit, like subreddits and other forums where people just talk really good about it. Holy Moly Donut Shop / cross with Strawberry Cough. Grand Prix number 2 S1, Purple Punch S1, Purple Punch crossed with Purple Punch crossed with Mac 1. Is that your current run that you have going, Dab Marino, or are those all the genetics that are included in a single breeding project? If I knew a grower got a tester bean and something went wrong, then who would be to blame? So avoid all that he does to release testers. I definitely don't disagree with that stance, Anthony, but I also think that if you are able to handpick breeders that you trust, that again have 10, 15 years growing experience, a level that you think is okay to send, and if he's not comfortable with anyone, I'm not saying that's wrong. But if you can do that, that gives you the power to tell them to grow the plant in a specific way, to give it specific stressors to see how they react, to further narrow down problems with this plant that it could face, or things you need to worry about, or genetic expressions that you want to have translate into the next generation. So it is a superpower to have those kinds of things.
Facilities can run.
Holy Moly Donut Shop sounds like something I want.
Do some proper testing themselves, so that is possible. But here in tents, in the home world, when we're dealing with, limited plant counts, you can't possibly.
Here you go taking your limitations and putting them on other people. You can't. Don't say you. First of all, tell all the.
He's coming in here super heated, but so far, I have not heard him say how many plants he can grow. So is he a licensed grower that can grow thousands of plants, hundreds of plants at a time? We don't know. So we have to assume that he might be facing certain limitations. He sent me F1s, and I'm hunting them through a regular pack, kept 2 from the hunt out of 3 females, run 2 or more runs with clones, and narrowed it down to a cut number 3. That's awesome.
Dog breeders who've created breeds from 8 puppies, 10 puppies, 5 puppies, over and over again, 3 puppies, 12 puppies, and 40 years, 30 years of that. Where do you think this education
Holy
comes from?
shit, how old is this guy?
So you telling me you can't do it because you have more to work with? Bro, you can do, I can do, my audience can do, the community can do, you can't. But don't tell them they can't.
Test as many as you need to. And if you actually do, it's going to take you years to do it.
Chad's 47.
We are breeders.
I was talking about Zaza.
No breeder would be in a rush to do anything. We are here to preserve, enhance, prevent extinction. We are here to be an impact on endangerment. We are here to make genetics better and keep them around so other people in the future can have. So I guarantee for you, this is something different. This is about money. This is about just whatever.
How old are you, Nate? What the hell's going on?
Just to, clout, money. I'm just going off what you're saying. I don't know you.
Most people want to get things to markets quickly, so
I feel like he reiterates that he doesn't know Chad, and obviously Chad doesn't know Zaza because he doesn't know a lot of the information that he's talking about. He's misinterpreting, mishearing, misunderstanding what's going on, and building an argument off of what he thinks is happening, which is, it's called conversation, and that's why we're having it. 50 something, nice. That's why we're having the conversation, to narrow down what we think is acceptable, trying to come and clear things up for the home grower who doesn't have as much to work with, who has a lot more to lose if things don't work well. So that's why we have to have the conversation to actually clear things up. But there's a lot of there's a lot of questions that I wish I had the answers to that he's simply moving around. Yeah, no, he doesn't seem like he wants to get to know Chad at all or have a conversation with him. He just seems like he's super heated about what he thinks is being misunderstood.
There you go. There you go. I prove my point. People want it. That's what I'm saying. I don't care about no market, bro. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to educate. I'm here for QCE. Bring better quality to this community through education. That's it. That's all I care about. And making sure that when I'm involved, you see this dog right here, this dog I got in the background laying down? That's a Dutch Shepherd. Do your research on a Dutch Shepherd, why I got a Dutch Shepherd and don't have a German Shepherd, right? The German Shepherd far more popular. You know why? Because the Dutch Shepherd is an endangered species. It was used in a certain war years and years ago, and it had a job within.
With a mediator? Yeah, I think a good mediator. Oh, who would want to mediate that conversation and kind of keep everything level and civil? I can't even think of somebody, because maybe Mr. Growit would be a good mediator to have a video call with these two. Maybe I wouldn't want to have that task. Because it could go either way. It could be a very civil conversation, or Zaza could fly off the handle a little bit and get a little bit aggressive. And maybe even Chad has a couple dragons that he's hiding. Fox News. I want to say Zaza is in New Jersey. I don't think New Jersey has been a legal state that long. Who says he's been doing it legally this whole time? Who says he's following the legal restrictions? Who the fuck knows? Maybe that's why he's tiptoeing around the plant count. Maybe that's why. Not to put any words in his mouth or anything like that.
In that particular war, and it was very successful during the war, but after the war ended, they had no purpose. So they were killed away, they were died away, whatever, until they became endangered. So to prevent that, to be a part of saving that breed and know what it feels like to really be a breeder, that's what I invested in, is a Dutch Shepherd.
Nice.
Not taking years to run 10 here, 10 here, 10 here. So that's one thing. But another very crucial part of testing is different environments and different growers, because you're going to run into all kinds of different issues.
That's what bro, what do you mean? If you could simulate the sun, you can simulate wind, you can simulate drought, you can simulate flood, you can simulate whatever you want. I don't need to send it to Afghanistan so it could be in a...
He's not wrong.
Like, I don't need to send it to Arizona so it could be... If anybody could do it, I could do it. So let me ask you this. Why would I not do it if it was beneficial, knowing that I have a team of people from all different states in different countries that I have access to, addresses that I can sit and say, yo, as I did have a team called Pheno Gang, but you know what that concept was built on? Education. They needed to get to a certain level before they could even ever be a part of a group hunt. They needed to understand how hunting was from their own perspective. What they saw when they went on a hunt by themselves. What experience they gained individually. It starts there. It has to. I have a team that I could do that with. There's no benefit to me until they get to a certain level of education. Then I can say, yo, Goldbeard, yo, I'm about to send you 100 seeds.
Oh, nothing works on this act.
I love how that cut happened right as
I'm a licensed dermatology provider from
an ad
Curology.
popped up.
Answer a few questions. I'll look at your.
But they have to be at a certain level themselves in order to do that. Because I've always wanted to achieve excellence. That's why I don't just let people test my stuff. Because they don't have the ability to see what I see. If my mama said, if you want to do it right, you got to do it yourself, man. And that's simple as it is. There's no science to it. That's just my preference.
Which is
That's all
fair.
I know. So you can have whatever, concept
Yeah, based on what he is unveiling in this conversation, or this reaction rather, it seems like Chad didn't really have a leg to stand on if all of the information was already brought out. So again, if Zaza articulated things, went into things a little bit deeper as to what he was actually doing behind the scenes, this confusion wouldn't have happened. But at the same time, we should respect his privacy. And if he doesn't want to share something about what he's doing, as long as everything is solid and he's putting out good genetics, which, as far as I understand, he seems to be doing, it's none of our business really what his method is. Like, if he can build genetics that are comparable, that stand the test of time, if he's preserving certain genetics even, and that's all he's doing, it's respectable work. I mean, it's breeding, and he's making genetics that are seemingly solid, so there doesn't seem to be very many problems with this.
It don't got nothing to do with me, because you honestly didn't hear it correctly. So maybe you should go back and watch it again and see that what I choose to do has nothing to do with what you choose to do. And I believe Chris, he had a point when he said it is confusing growers. When you start these conversations where you think you know something, but you really don't know what you're talking about, because that's not what I said at all, you know. But
to be fair, I think you also had a good hand in confusing growers a little bit.
I do test my stuff. I only have the ability to test it at the level that I tested at. I wouldn't send it to you, and I won't send it to none of my people either, until they've grown their eyes and hands-on experience to a certain level that I can rely on.
And what level is he going to? Is it a certain amount of years of experience? Is it understanding very specific things about the plant? Is it just understanding how genetics translate, or just being able to identify a good, healthy plant? Like, what exactly is the level he's talking about?
All right? Because that, in turn, lands to the people that you claim to speak up for the customer, right? Oh, we got to do good for the customer. This is exactly what I do. This is why I keep it in my hands, because little has the knowledge and the experience to do what I do. Yeah, you can have this conversation in Discord with Goldbeard Genetics, 703, any of those guys, man. They read genetic code, man. They would love to have this. They'd be like, Zah, move out the way, man. Let me talk to him. You shouldn't even be talking. But whatever. Much love to you, man. Much love to Pigeons, man. Thank you, bro, for another good banger. And follow us on AC Infinity. Use code Team Zaza at checkout. Follow us on ZazaGenetics.com. Take advantage of that sale. And much love, gang, until we meet again.
Yeah, he got a little bit heated on this response, but I feel like a lot of things were fleshed out. I feel like I understand his process a lot more, and that he understands he knows what he's doing. I feel like he has a very specific mission that he's going upon, and I think he's just an honest guy who wasn't ready to have this conversation to the proportion that it blew up on, and he was not expecting someone to misconstrue what he said in such a way to where he had to have a conversation remotely to this kind of just nature in general, and just being misconstrued in what he actually said on the podcast. Should Jad have been a little bit more careful with his listening ears, I think we could safely say that, yeah, he probably should have rewatched the episode, rewound that little segment that he had issue with. But all in all, I feel like Chad did end up putting a good piece. If you haven't seen that full video, go on Pigeons 420's channel and go check it out, because other than the clickbait-esque thumbnail, it was a very quality video full of quality information. And if you ignore the fact that it seems like he's attacking Zaza, which I don't believe he is. I don't think he's trying to come after him in a malicious kind of way. I just think he misunderstood what he said. He does share a lot of good things that would be behind the scenes kind of stuff, and understanding the backbone of genetics. I think it's all very good, but I just wanted to kind of get in here, go over these two specific videos where Zaza does a response, because I wanted to just have a raw reaction to what was going on, and what people are really confused about, and the nature of how he goes about his business. And even though he didn't share like a ton of detail, I do feel like I was able to get a lot more of a grasp of understanding of where he's coming from and what he's doing. So until next time, I appreciate you guys hanging out. I appreciate the chat and the conversation. If you have not yet, leave your final messages and goodbyes, and also leave a like before you go. It really helps out the channel and the algorithm and the video in general. And hey, to all you guys who are watching back and have sat through this whole thing, I appreciate you. I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much.